Bill Maher is a self-confessed atheist, a good old liberal commentator, a comedian, a well-known American TV host. In the recent years, he has made this into his annual custom. Whenever a popular Christian holiday like Christmas or Easter comes up, our good old Bill gets all excited to share his great discoveries with the world that Jesus was not all that special. He announces boldly that every aspect of Jesus' life was copied from pagan deities from ancient Rome, Greece, ancient Egypt, Persia, and much more. Let's take a listen to this. Yes, Bill never gets tired of speaking truth. So when the month of December came, Bill couldn't contain his enthusiasm. He went on his famous annual rant against Christianity. He proclaimed the gospel truth: Jesus is just like any pagan deity. His followers cheered him on in his expose of this horrible Christian cover-up that has been kept under wrap for all these years, only to be exposed by the brave, brilliant American comedian, the great Maher himself. His recent episode was titled "The Truth About Christmas." I would like to closely analyze his video and see whether there is really any truth at all in Bill Maher's "The Truth About Christmas." Welcome to Discern Scripture YouTube channel. We post videos regularly on various biblical topics. Please feel free to look through our recent series and other videos. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and support our channel. Our backend statistics tell us that only 2% of our viewers subscribe. We would really appreciate if you subscribe and help us reach wider audience. We are committed to bring unique content and fresh perspective in our analysis that will inform your mind and strengthen your faith in Jesus Christ. Now let's get on with the video. From where did Bill Maher get his information? In 2008, Bill Maher made a popular documentary called Religulous. The clip we saw in the intro came from that documentary. He regularly mocks religion in general, particularly whipping Christianity in his TV show whenever possible. As I mentioned earlier, during special Christian holidays, he loves to present his great discoveries to the wider audience. He compares Christ with so many other religious figures and finds extraordinary commonalities that no one else would ever see. You might mistake him for a scholar of comparative religion. No, he is not. Then you might wonder from where he got all these wonderful information or revelations. The real truth is that the greatest discoveries of Bill Maher is not actually his. He borrowed them generously from a previous documentary called Zeitgeist from 2007 by Peter Joseph. You might ask, what Peter Joseph, a scholar of comparative religion? No, that is also not the case. So Bill Maher repeats the same line of argument verbatim that he heard from Zeitgeist. These are the same arguments that he has repeated ever since the release of his Religulous documentary. Scholars have rejected Zeitgeist as pseudo-history and conspiratorial. Zeitgeist does not have the support of mainstream scholarship, but that does not stop good old Bill from spreading his truth about Christmas and Christ.
You know that whole thing about Jesus being born on December 25th? Well, it's a crock of shit. Now, this is not an attack on Jesus, although he was a Nepo baby, but also a revolutionary philosopher with a beautiful message. As to whether he's a god, that's up to you. But if the subject is gods born on December 25th, we have enough of those for an entire Jeopardy category. He was the Egyptian god who took the form of a falcon. Who is Horus? He is the god from ancient Persia born bearing a torch. Who is Mithras? He is the Greek god of rebirth. Who is Adonis? He was the fertility god in Cleopatra's time. Who is Osiris? This Greek deity was known for having a good time. Who is Dionysus? Well, yeah, we wrapped up the Emmy with that one.
Since he has done it again this year, we are left with no option but to debunk him again. As long as falsehood gets proclaimed, truth, the real truth, needs to be told as well, loud and clear. Is Jesus just a copy of a pagan gods? Now, I would like to look at 4 of the gods that Bill mentions and see whether the comparisons are accurate. Let's look at Mithras from Persia and Rome, and Krishna from India, Horus from Egypt, and Dionysus from Greece. I would like to go to the very source from where these myths are derived and the date of their writings. How accurate are these similarities between Jesus Christ and these pagan mythological deities? Let's look at Jesus versus Mithra. And often it is claimed that Mithra was born of a virgin, born on December 25th. He had 12 disciples. He performed miracles and died for 3 days, and then he resurrected. Let's see whether these claims are true on close analysis. So where do we get the information about Mithras? Mithraism is classified as a mystery religious cult. God Mithra was one of the gods of the Zoroastrian pantheon in Persia. Later on, his religion was adopted by the Romans and became quite popular between 2nd to 4th century in the Roman Empire. Much of what is known as Mithraism comes from various depictions of Mithras in the art and sculpture found in Maitreya or Mithraic temples and other archaeological sites. We don't have any text from Mithraic religion. There is a lack of written records. The secretive nature of Mithraic rituals make it challenging to fully understand the beliefs and practices of Mithraism. Now let's turn to the points of comparison. Was Mithras born of a virgin? First thing is that the details of Mithras' birth are not as extensively documented. In the most widely accepted version of Mithraic myth, Mithras is often depicted as emerging fully grown and fully armed from a rock. So he was not born in a real sense. He was not born from a woman. How can a fully grown adult coming out of a rock be compared with a virgin birth? The comparison is completely false. Was Mithras born on December 25th? The claim that Mithras was born on December 25th is a common misconception. We don't have any ancient support to say that Mithras was born on December 25th. So this is simply false as well. Did Mithras have 12 disciples as Jesus? In some Mithraic artwork, Mithras is depicted surrounded by some figures. In these scenes, there are often 12 smaller figures accompanying Mithras, but these figures are usually representations of the zodiac signs than the disciples. The zodiac symbolism is a common motif in Mithraic art, and the presence of 12 figures is associated with the cosmic and astrological aspects of Mithraic mythology. So the point is this: to claim that Mithras had 12 disciples just because he was surrounded by 12 figures is the misinterpretation of the evidence we have at hand. No, Mithras did not have 12 disciples. Did Mithras perform miracles? There is no mentioning of Mithras performing any miracles. He did only one thing. He killed a bull, and we don't know why. There must be some mysterious teachings behind the slaying of the bull, because several of these sculptures from Mithraic temples, the killing of the bull is known as turoctony. It is central to Mithraic cult, at least from the Roman times. Other than this, there is no recorded miracles performed by Mithras. Again, the comparison is very inaccurate and false. Did Mithras die and resurrect? Was he dead for 3 days and resurrected? In the Mithraic iconography, Mithras is seen as killing the bull. There is no other depiction of him dying. His death is not recorded either in iconography or in literary sources. No resurrection, since there is no death. So this is another spurious similarity simply made up.
Some people arguing that both Mithras and Jesus spring from some universal savior god motif, and that both of these guys share certain characteristics, like the claim that they were born on December 25th, that they were born of a virgin, or that they both had 12 disciples. The problem is, all of these claims that Bill Maher just cited are actually completely false. I'm sorry, Bill. I really like you. You're one of the best political satirists out there, but let's leave the ancient history to the professionals.
Now let's move on to the second pagan god, Krishna from India. Maher claims that Krishna was a carpenter. He was born of a virgin. There was a star in the east when he was born. He performed miracles, and he got baptized in the river, and he resurrected after his death. I couldn't believe what I heard. Anyone with a cursory understanding of Hinduism will laugh at all of these claims. Next time when you meet a Hindu, please ask them whether Krishna was a carpenter. Where do we get the information about Krishna's birth and life? Main source of Krishna's life legends come from Bhagavata Purana. It was likely composed in its present form during the first millennium after Christ, likely between 8th and 10th century AD. That is 800 to 1000 years after Christ. The source does not predate Christianity. The Bhagavata Purana itself is divided into 12 books, with the 10th book, often referred to as the Bhagavata Purana proper, being particularly dedicated to the life and teachings of Krishna. This section includes the detailed narrative of Krishna's birth, childhood, and various exploits. Remember, the date of writing is 800 to 1000 years after Christ. If at all any similarity is found, it is more likely that the later one copied from the earlier, not the other way around. Now let's turn to the points of comparison. Was Krishna born of a virgin? Whoever made these points have no basic awareness of Hindu myths about Krishna. Krishna was the 8th child, born to his parents Vasudeva and Devaki. Who in the right mind would compare his birth with a virgin birth? No one would consider a woman who delivered her 8th baby as a virgin unless you live in a Bill Maher's alternative reality. Was there a star in the east when Krishna was born? There is no direct equivalent of a star associated with Krishna's birth in Hindu scriptures. There were some miracles associated with his birth, like the doors of the prison opening and the parting of the river and so on, but there is no mentioning of star. It says that the birth was accompanied by a lot of rain. Even if there was a star, it wouldn't have been seen. The comparison is just made up. Krishna was born in Rohini Nakshatra. It doesn't mean that there was a special star that appeared, just like we see in the case of Jesus' birth. Did Krishna perform miracles? Now, God figures are often said to be performing miracles, and Krishna is said to be a God figure, and he did lift a mountain using his little finger to protect his people from rain. He killed some very mean demons. He multiplied himself to dance with very beautiful women, and so on. Those are some of the miracles that Krishna did. Did Krishna resurrect after his death? The story of Krishna's death is narrated in the Maushala Parva section of the Mahabharata, one of the Hindu epics. It describes the events that occurred after the great Kurukshetra war. So after the war, Krishna returned to Dwaraka, that is his city. According to the accounts, Krishna was shot by a hunter on his toe and he died, similar to how Achilles died in the Homer's Iliad. Talk about ancient plagiarism. According to Bhagavata Purana, Krishna left his physical body. There is no bodily resurrection. He just died when shot by the hunter. Krishna never returned or seen alive again. There was no bodily resurrection, period. And the comparison between bodily resurrection of Krishna and Jesus is simply made up. It does not exist. Now let's compare Horus from Egypt and Jesus Christ. Horus is said to be born on December 25th, born of a virgin, star in the east, adorned by 3 kings, teacher at 12, baptized, ministry at 30, and he had 12 disciples. Let's go over them and see whether these are accurate. Where do we get the information about Horus? The mythology of Horus evolved over time, and different aspects of his characters were emphasized in different periods of ancient Egyptian history. Here are some texts: pyramid texts and coffin texts, mythological texts and Heliopolitan Aeneid, the contendings of Horus and Seth, and temple inscriptions and religious texts. These are some of the primary texts from which we derive the stories of Horus. There is no monolithic Horus myth. It is important to note that the interpretations of Horus mythology can vary, and different periods and regions within ancient Egypt had distinct perspective on his character and role. Now let's go over the comparisons. Was Horus born on December 25th? Now, in the case of Horus, ancient Egyptian texts and myths do not provide a specific date for his birth. The idea of linking 2 figures, Horus and Jesus, on this specific date is not supported by mainstream scholarship. It is often considered as misinterpretation or an attempt to find parallels where there are none. Next, was Horus born of virgin? Horus was born to Osiris and Isis. Osiris was killed by his brother Seth. His body was dismembered and scattered. Isis magically reassembled his body and temporarily brought him back to life. Then she transformed herself into a bird and hovered over Osiris, and she became pregnant. So she was impregnated by Osiris at the verge of his death. After that, Osiris entered afterlife, and became the ruler of the underworld. Does that sound similar to the virgin birth narrative we see in the Gospels? Not to me. Was Horus adorned by three kings? First of all, Bible does not give us the number of people who came to worship Jesus. Bible doesn't say there were three kings. Bible doesn't say they were kings. Bible doesn't say they were three. It only says Magi from the east or the wise men from the east. Also, the most well-known stories about the adoration or homage to Horus involve the divine recognition of his legitimacy over Seth, often by other gods accepting Horus as the rightful ruler of Egypt, not Seth. It is not equivalent to the adoration of the Magi. There is no similarity to the adoration of the human wise men in the story of Horus. Was Horus a teacher at 12? Now, Bible doesn't say that Jesus became a teacher at 12. He asked very curious questions and engaged in discussion with the learned rabbis who were at the temple. He never became a teacher at 12. There is no evidence that Horus became a teacher at 12 either. The details about Horus' life and activities during his childhood and adolescence are not extensively documented in Egyptian mythology. This is a made-up similarity. Did Horus get baptized? Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. Often it was claimed that Horus was baptized by Anup the baptizer. But in reality, the stories of Horus in ancient Egyptian mythology do not include details about him getting baptized or beginning the ministry at the age of 30. There is no support for this in any of the myths related with Horus. Was Horus crucified? Jesus was crucified, he died, and he rose again after 3 days. But was Horus crucified? Now, there are different accounts of how Horus died or did not die. In some accounts, it says that he did not die. In some other accounts, it says that he died as a child after having been poisoned by a scorpion. In other accounts, his death is conflated with Osiris. But the film Zeitgeist claims that he was crucified. Now, crucifixion was a Roman invention. There was no Egyptian equivalent. How did the Zeitgeist justify that Horus was crucified? And there are images of Horus standing with outstretched arms, and that's it. And they take that as a symbolism and connect it with crucifixion of Jesus. We need to really remember Egyptians never practiced crucifixion, so the connection is simply made up.
Not so fast, preacher man. Behold, it is I, Horus, Egyptian god of the sun, and while you all believe that you've been celebrating the birth of your Lord Jesus, you've really been celebrating the birth of me. For you see, thousands of years before your Jesus came around, I, Horus, was born on December 25th. I, Horus, was born of a virgin. I, Horus, was baptized by a man called Anup the baptizer, was crucified and was resurrected 3 days later. So you see, your Jesus is nothing more than plagiarized poppycock, and I, Horus, have come to feast upon the sorrow of you foolish Christians.
Yeah, none of the stuff you just said is true.
Yes, it is.
No, there's no reference in Egyptian mythology to Horus being crucified or resurrected 3 days later. There's no documentation anywhere for the existence of a figure named Anup the Baptizer. Horus's mother was not a virgin woman, but the goddess Isis, and there is no specific date anywhere tied to the birth of Horus.
I'm pretty sure there is.
Actually, no. All of these claims and many others indicating that early Christians yoinked the mythology of Horus and stuck it on top of Jesus were all completely made up by Gerald Massey, a 19th century cuckoo banana-bird self-taught Egyptologist who never provided the slightest shred of evidence for any of these claims and who was laughed out of the room by every serious Egyptologist on the planet. So thank you very much for your attempt to ruin our celebration of Christ's birth, but I'm afraid we're all still having a very Merry Christmas, Horus.
Horus? Did I say my name was Horus?
Sorry, Horus, we don't find any similarity between you and Jesus Christ. Let's go to the fourth pagan god, Dionysus from Greece. Often it is said that Dionysus was born of a virgin, born on December 25th. He performed miracles. He was called King of Kings, Alpha and Omega, and he resurrected after being killed. So where do we get information about the Dionysus myth? The primary sources of information about Dionysus came from Greek mythology, literature, and various works of art. Here are some key sources. Homer's epics, both Iliad and Odyssey, Hesiod's Theogony, Orphic hymns, and Euripides' plays, particularly the Bacchae, hymns to Dionysus, art and iconography, and so on. So Dionysus, like many figures in mythology, has variations in his stories and cult practices across different regions and time periods in Greece. As we would expect, these stories are diverse and they are non-linear as they deal with mythological figures. Let's go to the points of comparisons. Was Dionysus born of a virgin? According to the Greek myth, Dionysus is a son of Zeus and a human princess Semele. So Zeus fell in love with Semele and had a physical union with her, and she became pregnant. Hera, the wife of Zeus, was jealous of Semele and tricked her into asking Zeus to reveal his true divine form. So when Zeus appeared in his full divine glory, the human Semele was consumed by the intense radiance. But Zeus managed to rescue the unborn Dionysus from Semele's womb. How did he rescue the baby? Zeus transferred the unborn Dionysus by sewing the fetal Dionysus into his own thigh. Then he carried the developing child to full term and delivered him. Obviously, the pregnancy bump was on Zeus' thigh. This is no way similar to the virgin birth account of Jesus Christ. Was Dionysus born on December 25th? No, absolutely not. There is no historical or mythological evidence to suggest that Dionysus was born on December 25th. The idea of associating the birth of deities, including Dionysus, with December 25th is not rooted in classical mythology, but rather in later interpretations. Simply, this is untrue. Did Dionysus perform miracles? We know that Jesus performed many miracles. One of the first miracles that he did was to turn the water into wine at the wedding in Cana. So usually people claim that Dionysus changed water into wine, but there is no specific reference from classical literature. Dionysus is indeed associated with wine. He is considered to be the god of wine and partying. So his myths often involve the cultivation of grapes and the production of wine rather than a direct transformation of one substance into another. So the specific act of transforming water into wine is not documented in the traditional myths about Dionysus. The similarities are simply made up. Was Dionysus called the King of Kings or the Alpha and the Omega? Now, Dionysus was a god of wine. As a demigod, his ranking would be way below. A title King of Kings would be given to someone like Zeus in the Greek pantheon. So Dionysus was not called King of Kings. And the reference to Alpha and the Omega is absent in the literature as well. When the Bible refers to Jesus as Alpha and Omega, it refers to his divinity, his eternal pre-existence. So from Dionysus myths, we know that he was not eternal. He was born as a result of an union between Zeus and Semele. If you apply the title Alpha and the Omega to Dionysus, it wouldn't make sense at all. Did Dionysus die and resurrect? There are different myths about Dionysus' death. According to some well-known accounts, Dionysus faced opposition from Titans, the predecessors of the Olympian gods. In one version of the story, the Titans tore Dionysus apart, but his heart was still beating. The heart was rescued or saved either by his grandmother Rhea or his aunt Athena. The heart was then used to recreate or resurrect Dionysus. In some accounts, the saved heart was used to recreate Dionysus in his full-grown form, while in others, he may be reborn as an infant and later mature into his full godly form. These are highly symbolic. The overarching theme is one of regeneration and renewal, aligning with the cycles of nature, particularly the growth of vines, annual cycle of the grape harvest. He is, after all, the god of wine. Also, death and rebirth of Dionysus has no specific timeline or durations for the process. This is no way compared to the death of Christ and the bodily resurrection on the third day. The connection is simply not there. So we don't find any concrete similarity between the pagan gods and Jesus. We looked at Jesus and Mithras, Jesus and Krishna, Jesus and Horus, and Jesus and Dionysus. The similarities exist only in the mind of those who made these memes. This line of argument can only sway those who are unaware of these myths. People like Bill Maher and the makers of Zeitgeist, they bet on people's ignorance to push in these similarities. Now let's move on to discuss an important question: how to deal with people who bring up these alleged parallels in our conversations. There are many people who believe these lies, and in this age of TikTok and social media, conspiracies, they thrive and they spread so widely. So when people ask us questions of these kind, it is important to engage them in conversation, patiently guiding them towards finding the truth. So these are opportunities that can be used to guide them to understand the truth. Let me share 3 helpful points. First, ask them where they are getting their information. If they point you to a particular website or a movie, ask them where that website or movie got their information. See, we need to probe the source. Look for any ancient source, particularly pre-Christian sources. Most of the sources that make these claims are recent. Second, take the parallels one at a time and clarify them. It's easy for someone to rattle off a list of alleged parallels, making it appear as the evidence is overwhelming. But if you take time to examine each supposed parallel, you will find, as we found above, that they are not very similar at all. Most points can be proven to be inaccurate and outright false. On close scrutiny, we find that whoever put the list together made these gods look similar with the sole intention of defaming Christ and Christianity. Point number 3, study the alleged parallels for yourself from authoritative and trusted sources. If you're interested in serious academic inquiry, you could purchase the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt or the Oxford Dictionary of Classical Myth and Religion, both from Oxford University Press. Also, you might want to check out Refuting Zeitgeist, the movie by Mark W. Foreman, a professor of philosophy and religion from Liberty University, USA. I will add the link to his video in the description. So here is my closing thoughts. A lot of people, perhaps nominal Christians, are confused by the overgeneralizations they hear in the media. Bill Maher and Zeitgeist's line of argument sure confuses a lot of people. They think that Christianity is a mixed bag of myths, and it's one of the many ancient Middle Eastern cults from the 1st century time period. It is our duty to help them not fall for these lies. We can help them to check the facts carefully, one by one, tracing the criticism and arguments all the way to their original source. Once we do that, the falsehood in Bill Maher's repeated annual assertions can be exposed. These are clearly fabrications that are glaringly inaccurate and deliberately dishonest to the core. The parallels that Bill Maher claims, such as resurrection and virgin birth, they are simply not there. In this connection, William Lane Craig, one of the renowned Christian apologists, says this: in fact, when you look at Jesus against the background of 1st century Palestinian Judaism, what you discover is that Gospels emerge as very credible sources for the life of Jesus. These so-called pagan myths and parallels are just spurious. None of the comparisons have been genuinely derived from ancient pre-Christian literary sources, rather manipulated to fit an already existing atheistic agenda. On the contrary, Jesus Christ is unique. His virgin birth, his sinless life, his substitutionary death, and his glorious resurrection remain unparalleled in human history. The life and example of Christ is rooted in history and continues to inspire and guide billions of people around the world. Christianity is not a myth that evolved over centuries. Christianity is rooted on solid historical foundations. So Bill Maher's comparisons fall flat when we closely analyze these gods, these pagan gods with Christ. Since the release of his documentary, many have pointed out the dishonesty and errors in his presentation of the evidences. Yet, Bill Maher continues to repeat them year after year as established fact, as facts that are unchallenged. I think the issue is not the lack of facts or information. Something much more deeper is at play here. Jesus pointed out in John chapter 3, verse 19 to 21. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of the light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. Yes, the deeper issue here is not the absence or the lack of facts that's driving people like Bill Maher to live godless lives. Bill Maher named his documentary Religulous, religious, and ridiculous. The only one really clueless all along seems to be Bill Maher himself. And that, my friends, is the greatest irony of Bill Maher's The Truth About Christmas. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and support our channel. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Once again, thank you all. God bless you. Shalom.